Welcome, parents. We're so excited to have you guys tonight. We have a really hot topic that we're going to present to you: empowering through boundaries, strategies to avoid those power struggles. I'm a mom of three. I have a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a newborn. And so we definitely have some of those in all different ages at our house. And we're excited to talk about this tonight. We have some of our very own Allen ISD presenters here for you. Jenna Katz is a behavior coordinator. Jonathan Martinez is a lead behavior specialist, and Lauren Brown is also a behavior specialist. So thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. I'm excited to hear all the things that you have to share with us. So I'm going to let you guys take it over.
Oh, thank you. And we are excited to be here. We're excited to share some strategies and some ideas to really help support in not engaging in those power struggles. I also am a mother of three. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I can tell you, I have been known to maybe not have some strong boundaries or have avoided that power struggle, but now that we know better, we do better, right? So we're excited to talk to you guys, and we appreciate Ms. Croson for inviting us to this. So we wanted to start off with this slide because it's not only cute, but it is relevant, and it's something that I think we all have experienced. There's nothing more entertaining to a defiant kid than a frustrated adult. And I feel like we can all relate to this. As we move forward in our discussions today, let's consider the idea that our reactions can play a significant role in the dynamics of power struggles. So children, especially those that are testing boundaries, they might find a certain satisfaction in seeing us frustrated. It's not about undermining our authority, but rather exploring the boundaries and setting that family dynamic. So today our goal is to really equip ourselves with tools and strategies to navigate these moments more effectively. Instead of becoming frustrated, can we find ways to stay calm and composed? Can we engage in communication that fosters understanding and cooperation rather than escalating into a power struggle? There you go. All right, we're going to talk about some behavior functions. All behavior is communication. You may have heard this before. I know we say it all the time.
So
probably our favorite quote. Every action, every word, every gesture is a form of expression. It's a way to convey feelings or needs. I know Ms. Croson said she has a newborn, so that baby is crying, and it's telling mom that they have a need. So all behavior serves a purpose. And when we refer to function, we're really talking about the why. Why is the child acting that certain way? There are 4 different functions that we're going to talk about. So one is escape. The next is attention, tangibles, and sensory. And we're going to break these down a little bit for you guys. Escape behaviors are when a child engages in a behavior to avoid something. So it's something they don't want to do, or maybe a demand that you've told them or something you've asked them to do, and they're refusing to do that. This may look like a child throwing a tantrum when you ask them to brush their teeth because they don't want to brush their teeth. They want to get out of brushing their teeth. It could look like a child who complains, this is my own daughter, of a tummy ache when it's bedtime because they don't want to go to bed. She at that moment, guys, is the most hydrated kid I think ever because she also wants water. So it's those times when at bedtime that the demand is placed and they don't really want to do that. So they're trying to escape. Some strategies for an escape behavior could be decreasing the difficulty. It could be breaking a task into smaller sections. It could be ensuring that what we're asking of the kiddo is they are able to do that. Or it could even be asking your child or teaching your child an appropriate way to ask for help. We use first or when then at my house. So, when you finish your chores, then you can play your game. So using some of those strategies and maybe even providing choices. My youngest daughter, always a providing choice. Some say, okay, we have to get ready for school. Do you want to brush your teeth first or do you want to brush your hair first? So I'm giving her that ability to take ownership and to make that choice. And I like both choices. I'm okay either way. I don't care what she does first. We're going to move into the attention-seeking behaviors. Some attention-seeking behaviors are when a child is attempting to get your attention, or maybe a peer's attention, a sibling's attention. It's important to remember that attention can be both positive and negative attention. An example of attention seeking could be when a child cries or whines when you're on the phone. I know we all have probably experienced this. And we have a couple of options. So we can end the conversation really quickly and go back to playing with the kiddo. But what are we telling the kiddo? That we're stopping what we're doing to meet their needs. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Or you could even yell, "Stop, I'm on the phone." And the child is still getting that attention from you. That's the negative attention, but they're still gaining that attention. So if you notice that your child is attention seeking, then you can try some of these. You can teach your child to get your attention in a more appropriate way. So it could be saying, "Excuse me," or tapping your shoulder, whatever you are comfortable with. Ignoring the undesirable behaviors. So we're not giving them the attention at that time, but we'll give it to them when they provide that appropriate behavior. So when they're whining and I'm on the phone, I'm not going to stop and give them my attention, because that's not how I want them to gain my attention, is through whining and crying. I will give them my attention when they are settled, or when they're tapping me or asking me more politely for help or whatever it is that they need. Something that's really hard, and I thought a lot about when talking about attention seeking, is really finding the time. It's really important that we find that time to give the one-on-one attention to our kiddos. You know, research says at least 5 minutes of one-on-one attention a day to your kid. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you really think about it, our busy schedules, that's 5 minutes. It's a lot of time, but it is very important. So really trying to find that one-on-one time that you can give your child some attention. We're going to move into tangibles. So a tangible is when they are wanting to gain access to something, such as maybe a food or toys or something else that they want or need. A child may throw a tantrum to get a chocolate bar. Maybe we're at the grocery store and she wants M&Ms. Well, she's going to throw a tantrum. And if I give her that, well, then I have just reinforced that behavior. So she thinks every time I throw a tantrum, I'm going to get those M&Ms. We definitely want to teach and practice some appropriate ways to gain tangibles. So if they're asking or looking for something like that, I'm going to teach my kiddo what's an appropriate way to ask for M&Ms, or what's an appropriate way to ask for something that they are wanting. Provide the child with a lot of praise when they accept no. I do this at my house a lot too, is when when one of my kids, I have to tell them no, and they are able to take the no, I make sure to go back and touch base with them and say, "You know what? I know you really wanted that Snickers earlier today, but I appreciate the way that you accepted no and was able to move on from that." It's a really, really important lesson to learn. Learn little so you can be able to apply that as you're older. All right. And another thing about tangibles, which I think is really important and something that I use a lot too, is providing choices. So I may not want her to have M&Ms right before dinner, but I can offer, "You know what? You can have crackers or strawberry. Which of those would you like?" So finding some other options to something instead of whatever it is that you do not want them to have. The last behavior function that we're going to talk about is sensory. So sensory is when a child engages in a behavior because it simply feels good or it's self-stimulating. This behavior function either gives the child an internal sensation that's pleasing, or it removes the internal sensation that they do not like. So some examples of sensory would be scratching an itch. That's a sensory, or rocking themselves to self-soothe. Something you can do for this, some strategies for sensory, would be redirect to more appropriate behavior. So try to engage your kid into something that kind of has that same sensory input, but it's more appropriate. My daughter is a scratcher and a picker, so we've taught to rub, because that is less harm on her skin. So we've replaced that. It's still that same sensory input, just a little different. Teaching something that's more appropriately acceptable, socially acceptable, depending on the behavior. All right, so those are our 4 behavior functions. I know that was a lot, but We are going to keep going. There's a lot more to talk about. So we're going to move to rational detachment. And this is really important because when we find that kids are using one of those behavior functions, we need to know how we're going to respond. And something that we talk a lot about is rational detachment. It's about finding that balance between being emotionally engaged and maintaining a rational perspective. It doesn't mean we're just becoming indifferent or we're not caring. It's rather, it encourages us to take a step back, gain perspective, and respond thoughtfully in a challenging situation. So rational detachment is really important because a lot of times in our work, at home, with family, emotions can run high. Right? We get in the moment, we experience things, our emotions get really high. So really taking that rational detachment, practicing it, we are equipping ourselves with the ability to stay consistent, to stay calm, and will help us make a more informed decision, communicate more effectively, and navigate those conflicts with a clear and focused mind.
Yeah, there's a quote that I've heard so many times, which is behavior influences behavior.
Absolutely.
And so if we can stay rationally detached, then we're going to influence the behavior in a positive manner.
Yes. So it's really important to take a step back, take a breath, keep yourself calm and collected so that you can make the best choice on supporting one of those challenging behaviors when they arise. All right, precipitating factors. So precipitating factors are really those things that may be underlying, right? We talk about them in the classroom, but they still are the same at home. We see, I love this visual, and you guys have seen this a lot before too, is the iceberg. Because what happens is we can only see what's on top, right? That's the behavior. But the things underneath, the social, the emotional, the academic, the physical, are some of those things that are causing that behavior that we just might not see or notice. Some of those things could be peer, like arguments with their friends, and we don't know about them. They're coming home from school and we can tell something's a little off. Well, it could be that they've had an argument with their friend.
Could be that they're hungry. Maybe they didn't like the lunch at school that day. They didn't like the options offered. And so they're coming home and they're already a little upset from that.
Yes.
Yeah. Could even be looking at skill deficits. Maybe a student doesn't have, or a child doesn't have the necessary skills to be able to advocate for themselves. So it might turn out and be a behavior such as tantruming, yelling, screaming, things like that.
Right.
So it's all those things that are underlying. We see the behavior, but what all those things that are underlying that could cause the behavior.
Absolutely. So this is just a really good visual and something we wanted you guys to know because it is something that causes the behavior. So something to think about. All right, communication. 80% is 80% body language, facial expressions, postures, gestures. We talk about these with our kids, but sometimes we need to know these as adults, as parents, right? It's not exactly what we say too, it's how we're saying it, how we're saying it with our eyes. Am I standing with my arms crossed? Or am I standing with my hands on my hips?
I'm always guilty of that.
Guilty of that, yes. So it's really, how are we communicating? We need to make sure that we have that rational detachment, or we're taking a step back, or we're showing calm. We're not expressing that we're angry or frustrated when we're really trying to navigate those behaviors and those conversations.
Yeah, my mom had the crazy eyes, right? When I knew I was in trouble, and she would get this look, and that was communicating enough to me. That was the 80% that she was communicating.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point. Sometimes the communication from a parent could just be the look, right? That's what I was called to, the look. But we just need to be aware that even what we're saying, our body language is also talking.
Yep.
Paraverbals. This is another piece that's pretty interesting. I learned a lot about this just recently, but tone, volume, and cadence. What we're saying, how we're saying it, the volume we're saying it at. If I'm a parent and I'm talking to my kiddo and I'm trying to get them to leave from playing to go make their bed, do a chore, then my tone will be, I'm going to speak to them clearly. I'm going to have a consistent tone. Now my volume too needs to be direct. So we talk a lot about this with teachers, and it's the same with parents. When we're talking and we're really wanting something to be done, I'm going to make sure that my voice is heard and my voice is clear. I'm not yelling, but I'm being direct. So it truly depends on what the situation is, the behavior that's happening, but really to watch our tone, our volume, and our cadence. How quickly are we talking? How slowly are we
Joel.
talking?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes with the volume, when a kiddo is, are we good?
You're good now.
Okay. When a kiddo is screaming at you, all right, my niece and nephew, they might be upset and they might be screaming at me. And if I yell back to try to get them to hear me, it's going to set them off more. And so what I'll do is I'll use a very calm voice and I'll say, I'm here to listen whenever you're ready. And I wait till they come down to my volume and I ask them to match my volume. So if we can control ourselves, our tone, volume, and cadence, then we can help them bring it to the correct volume. It's a good point.
All right, guys. So this next little one that we're going into is how we are going to avoid the power struggle. And so here's a little image here. I love the quote. It says, here's the deal. We call the shots when you're young. You call the shots when we're old. And everything in between is a nonstop battle for control. So thinking about this, same thing with us as parents and with our students, we want to be able to turn over control to our students in some aspects, but at the same time, we are in control on certain things as well. So we always want to have that middle part be not so much of a struggle. How can we use our skills? How can we use our communication to be able to communicate what we're needing, what we're wanting, and how we're wanting it so that we do avoid a power struggle? We don't want to get ourselves falling into one at all. And so when we look at power struggles, there's a few different kinds of power struggles. I'm going to kind of go through here. The first one is defending your authority or credibility, you as a parent. So these are power struggles that involve defending your authority or credibility. Think of statements like, you can't tell me what to do, or I don't want to hear what you think as a nurse. I want to talk to the doctor. Okay. Typically, most people respond to this as a challenge by taking the challenge defensively, and they're taking it in a manner where, you know what, I'm putting my walls up and I'm stopping there, okay? Which makes it even more obvious that standoff is about to occur. There is things going on and it blurs that line. So when we are trying to defend our ability, we want to be able to downplay it, okay? If they're saying, hey, you know what, you can't tell me what to do. All right, I understand right now, but I'm getting right back to the direction or the directive that I've been given, all right? The next one we're looking at is pushing buttons. And so when the person we are struggling with knows us well, kiddos, parents, y'all spend quite a bit of time together. They probably have a sense of how to engage in behavior that gets under our skin and pushes our buttons. So they may engage in this behavior until they get the kind of reaction they seek, which is for their opponent to feel uncomfortable and back down, giving into what we're wanting. So what we are going to do is we need to be able to recognize what those buttons are for us. If I know that it irritates me whenever my kiddos will leave bowls of cereal out on the table, you know what? They know that's getting to me and it can get under my skin. So I'm going to do things beforehand to try to be proactive and make sure that those things don't get to me or downplay it. Another one is past history or irrelevant issues. So two people have had a history of struggling for this upper hand, often keeping something as far as a mental score in their head. You know what? I did this, did that, this person did this to me or that to me. They got onto me this many times. We want to be able to mend those relationships right at the point so that we're not having that past irrelevant issues. Things aren't coming up that happened in the past, especially when we're trying to focus and move forward, move on. That next one is making empty threats or ultimatums. And this can be kind of hard. You know, we see this, especially when our kiddos are, they're not listening, not following through. Maybe it's a time that it's after work. We've been at work all day. And then, you know what, I'm at my last straw. So I make open or empty threats and ultimatums that I cannot follow through with. So when looking at those, we want to make sure that we're not giving those ultimatums, we're not giving those threats, that we are setting reasonable and proportionate consequences. So for instance, looking at this, if our student is refusing to maybe brush their teeth at night, okay, well then one of the things that I might not be able to receive as a consequence is, all right, since you won't brush your teeth, then we're not going to be able to have 2 cookies before bed or so, things like that. All right. And then going on to the next one is what pushes your buttons. So this is just being personally aware. What things can get under your skin? What things will, make you upset or get to you. And we got to be able to know those buttons because we're going to try to avoid those. So being told no, waiting, also being aware of your students. Your kiddos. All right. What things will set them off? What buttons will you press? All right. So with saying that, let's just look at being told no. Some of our students have a hard time when they are told no, when they are told that they can't go through with something, they're denied access. So one of those things and one of the key techniques that we utilize is how to say no without saying no. So for instance, when a kiddo is maybe wanting to get, you used an example earlier. What was it? It was your kiddo didn't want to go to bed, right?
Yes, never wants to go to bed.
Uh-huh. So obviously her kiddo's probably wanting to stay up. And I would say something like, okay, no, it's not that you can't stay up right now, but yes, you can have your toy. You can have your water. You can have X, Y, or Z when something occurs. So yes, when you go to bed, then tomorrow we can make sure that we get up early, have a good morning, and we're going to start having pancakes. But if you don't go to bed tonight, we may not be able to have pancakes in the morning because we're going to stay up late. I won't be able to get up enough early. Okay.
I love that image right there of the buttons. With the elf.
The elf.
That is immediately, we can all, if you've watched Buddy the Elf, if you've watched that movie, then you can just play it in your mind. And how do you feel if somebody pushes every button on that elevator? Our kids do that sometimes too.
Buddy pushed everybody's buttons in that perspective. All right, guys. So the next one that we're going to do to help us avoid the power struggle is we're going to watch for signs and catch them early. We want to be able to intervene early enough so that we can avoid those. So with looking at that, we've got the first one is verbal engagement. So when your child is trying to verbally engage you in an argument, you want to make sure that you catch that ahead of time and be able to say, okay, if they are trying to pull me into a power struggle, I'm going to be directive and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I understand right now that you are not wanting to go to bed, but I am needing you to go ahead and start laying down, get your pajamas on, get everything going and get ready for bed. We have the stuck on it. And that's when your child persistently, is stuck on something. Maybe they're stuck on something that happened at school and they're bringing it home. So we want to be able to catch that beforehand, talk about it, and just really intervene. Here's another one, the desire to win. And so when your child wants to be correct, when they want to be right, or when it comes to activities, whether it's outside shooting hoops with their friends, or it's an actual game that they're participating in, and they have a struggle with losing. So we want to be able to catch that beforehand, teach our kiddos, you know what? It's okay to lose. It's okay to win. What does it look like when we win? We're going to be partners. We're going to be very friendly, handshake, high five, congratulate the other person and or team. But same thing, when we lose, we got to be able to understand that we can't win all the time. So when we lose, it's okay. There's always going to be other opportunities. There's going to be other chances. And we're really there. We want to be able to enjoy the time. If it's a game, enjoy that time with their peers, with their friends, with their family. That next one is taking it personally. So when your child seems to be taking it personally and not handle the issue or topic, I think it's good to be aware of knowing what your child may take personally. There can be different things. I know if I reflect back on me as a kiddo, I took it personally, my grades. And so whenever I was not succeeding, I maybe got a 70 or so on one of my papers, I took it personally. I couldn't get off of it, and I would take that home, and my parents were pretty good about it, explaining to me, hey, it's not that you're bad. It's not that you're not smart. It's just that maybe you did something a little bit wrong. Usually when it came to it, especially when it came to math, it was I flipped the sign. It was supposed to be addition or subtraction. It was my inability to really pay attention, but they were able to sit me down, talk to me, and explain to me how, so that I'm not truly taking it personally. The next one is aggression. So when your child becomes aggressive, agitated, or maybe starts making threatening comments, or movements that could be threatening, that you could see as threatening. So what we want to do is be able to catch those early. We want to be able to intervene early, stop them before getting there, especially if we know that our kiddos can and will get aggressive. We want to catch them beforehand and really be able to explain to them and reflect, hey, we don't need to get to that point. We don't need to be aggressive to get exactly what it is we want or to get our point across.
There are those physical signs leading up to aggression as well. The clenching of the hands, the red face when you can see that they're getting frustrated, and being able to see that before they lash out is going to help prevent it.
Yeah. Even some of our younger kiddos, you can start seeing that maybe they're starting to shut down where they're not responding. Maybe they're starting to ball up. I've seen, we see times kiddos will just want to ball up into their chair, into the sofa, something like that. So we want to be able to catch those beforehand. And then that last one is when a non-essential argument. So when the issue your child is arguing about is non-essential, important, or crucial to the actual conversation. So they may be thinking about it, taking it farther and farther along when it's not essential. One of the things I like to do is, when I'm really intervening with kiddos, how big is this problem? How does it affect me? How does it affect the whole situation? Is it something that I really need to be stuck on? Or is this something that we can talk about real quick and then let's move on because it is not important at that moment? So some of those things we might see when kiddos are tantruming, let's just say in the store when they're refusing because maybe they want an item, maybe they want a toy, something like that. We got to be able to explain to them and grasp with them, hey, what is the bigger problem? You know what? Yes, you don't have it. You're not going to be getting a toy here, but guess what? At home, you've got multiple toys. So that's what we're going to focus on, being able to interrupt and redirect our kiddos.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you do? I like this one. Pivot for all my friends, people. Pivot.
Playing in my head right now.
Yeah. All right. Saying no without saying no. And this is kind of what we talked about, like I brought it back before. All right. Yes, you may have the iPad after you take out the trash. So we're not saying, we're saying, yes, you have the opportunity to be able to gain something when something else occurs. So you want to be able to catch that beforehand. Start thinking about if it's, I know, for instance, this is the trash, but there's other things that you will deal with your kiddos. So you don't want to be able to you don't want to tell them no, especially if they have a hard time accepting it. It's how can we move through without saying.
And I can tell you it really is hard as a parent because you want to just a quick answer. So really practicing that is important, but it gets easier and easier the more you pivot.
Right.
Yeah, it is very effective as well. Kids, they hear the no and then they immediately they're not going to listen to everything after the no.
Yeah.
So if we say absolutely, but first I need you to do this. Then they're listening to what you need to do first.
Yep. Another one is offering choices. And so this one's one that I'm going to pair back in or, touch on a little bit is offering two desirable choices. So would you like to finish your homework or would you like to take out the trash first? Both of those are great things. We're turning control over to our kiddos. We want to see both of them done, but I'm going to let them choose which one is going to occur first. And then this last one is staying calm. Like we talked about, behavior will influence behavior. So if we as parents will start escalating, we start rising, as our kiddos start rising, it's just going to be a fight and battle. We're going up and up and up, and there's really going to be no solution to that. Your kiddo's going to be mad. You're going to be frustrated. So with that being said, if we can stay rationally detached, we can control our own self, our tone, our volume, how we address things without raising our voice. The likelihood is your student's going to respond in that same manner. Okay. Behavior will influence behavior. All right.
I think this is your favorite slide in the whole thing.
Hey, I'm going to jump in real quick. Hey, parents, if y'all have any questions, please put your questions in the chat. That way, if we can answer them along the way, we will. If not, we'll save them for the end. I didn't say that in the beginning. I meant to. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
We do have one question.
It's pivot. I love it.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Pivot.
Pivot. All right, guys. And so this next slide is about being specific. So using positive phrasing to let your child know specifically what to do rather than what not to do. And so this comes a big portion into how we say no. You know what? We can say no all the time. No, you can't do that. No, don't be doing that. But for us, we might, and for our kiddos, they might need to be told what they need to do rather than no. If they hear no, they might shut down or they might not know exactly. So please put your toys in the box. Instead of saying clean up can be very broad, but I'm being very specific. Please put your toys in the box. Please put your dirty clothes in the hamper. All right. Instead of saying don't leave your things lying around. So what we're doing is we're being very specific on exactly what we want. Curfew is at 11 o'clock. See you then. And that's going to be better than don't be late. Don't be late is an open-ended. We don't know. Kiddo may say, oh, late means I can't, as long as I'm home before 2 a.m., I should be good. All right. So we want to be very specific, using safe hands with your sister instead of saying stop hitting. Okay. We want to tell them exactly what they want to do. If our our children are playing with each other, we want to keep encouraging that. We won't want them to stop. We just want to tell them what's appropriate.
We can also positively reinforce them with some of the specific praise. They're doing what you want them to do now. So tell them exactly what it is that they just did and pair it with hey, good job, buddy. You kept your hands to yourself. I love that. You pair it with what you're seeing so that they know exactly what they did to earn your approval.
Yep. All right.
All right. So now what we have to do, though, is we do have to set limits. So if we want to avoid the power struggle, not pick up that rope, then we have to make sure that we are setting those limits. We do that by teaching them instead of punishing them. We offer them choices to share that control, and this all will help with avoiding that power struggle. So limits aren't threats. We're not threatening them. We're not giving them ultimatums or anything like that. But we can say things like, if you don't clean up, then you can't go outside and play. It's a natural consequence. You can also set limits by offering choices with the consequence. So if you clean up, then you'll be able to have some time to play outside today. If you don't clean up soon, it's going to be too dark to go outside, and then you're going to have to stay in. It's your decision. Try to make the consequences something that is pretty natural, that makes sense. It's rational, right? And then we use these limits to teach, not to punish. So sometimes our kids may not know how to accept the word no, or how to, maybe they don't know how to follow the direction we're asking them to do, just like they don't know how to add or subtract. We have to teach those things. We teach them how to listen as well and how to follow directions. What we do is we make sure that all of our actions, are positive or negative, result in predictable consequences. So we don't want to be unpredictable with our kids. We want the result to be the same each time. So if you make this choice, your consequence is going to be consistent. This provides structure that helps with good decision making. Now, setting limits is also more about listening than talking. And when you take the time to listen, you're going to be able to understand those thoughts and feelings that your kids are having better. So a lot of I think back to the iceberg. And if we listen to what they're saying, we can understand some of those underlying thoughts and feelings in order to understand what's causing the behavior.
Yeah, might be able to open up more to find out more details, exactly what's causing this behavior. What is my what is my child saying? Those are all those underlying things
Helps
that we
figure
can
out the function.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the why.
Yep.
Now, when we set limits, we recognize that we can't force people to respond to requests or follow directions or act appropriately. We can't force them to do anything. This is going to result in a non-productive power struggle if we just try to force it. By setting limits that offer choices, we take the control back, right? We're offering two choices that we're okay with. So I think back to, I let my niece know she freaks out if she drops something in the back seat of the car, and she wants me to stop right then and there. And I'm like, we're not going to stop in traffic. That's not going to happen. So you have two choices. Either you can take a deep breath and wait for me to get home and I'll find your toy. Or next time we go to the store, we may not be able to pick a toy out because it's caused this inappropriate behavior. So I'm letting her know that her choices, right? They're going to influence what's going to happen from here. Now, the key to setting limits is making sure that things are simple and clear. They need to be brief and to the point. Try to use as fewer words as possible. Keep your voice calm, clear, even voice tone, and make sure that you try to offer positive choices. Or if you're pairing it with a consequence, make sure that that consequence is more of a natural consequence. Make sure it's reasonable. It needs to be fair and appropriate, and avoid placing several demands at once. Sometimes if we place too many demands, they're not going to be able to follow all the demands and they might only get one. So if we place it step by step, then we'll get more compliance. Make sure it's enforceable and that it's realistic and that you can follow through. I saw this all the time growing up, right? You're grounded for a month. I don't know if I was ever actually grounded for a month, because I would ultimately end up getting out of it because it was really hard to keep me grounded for a month. It wasn't really enforceable, or I liked that I could just go read. And so it wasn't really enforceable for my parents to do that. So make sure that when you are making a limit, that you can follow through with it. Because if you don't follow through, you guys know this, if you don't follow through with it, they're going to remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to call you out on that.
everything. So they'll definitely remember that.
Yeah, you remember that one time when. Make sure that the timing is appropriate. Give them time to comply. I call this wait time. When my nephew is really upset, he needs several minutes of wait time. If I tell him, take a deep breath, I can't keep saying, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. I've got to give him time to listen to that. Make sure that it's meaningful and that it's motivating or reinforcing to them. So if we know that they're attention seeking, then to fix that, we need to make sure that we are offering something that is going to gain them attention. It has to reinforce that need in them, what they're wanting. And then be consistent. That's where all of these come into place. They're going to lead to consistency, because if you're consistent every time, your kids, they thrive on consistency. They like to know what the limit is and what line they can't cross.
The hardest, but most important.
It is. It is. Now we can set positive limits. And with that, we do that by making enforceable statements. So I'll listen as soon as your voice is as calm as mine. We interrupt and we can redirect. So your kiddo is shouting at you, screaming at you. Hey, buddy, you're shouting at me. Please speak quietly. You're pairing it with what you want to see. So
that specific behavior.
Yep. So you're letting them know that what you're not okay with, I'm not okay with you shouting at me. So please speak quietly instead. I do this all the time when I'm, doing following directions. I need you to look at me, say okay, and stay calm. It's built into my brain at this point. And so I let them know what I'm not seeing. Right now you're throwing your toys around. I need you to go ahead and put those toys up and then tell me, okay. And then when statements. When we get the dinner dishes cleaned up, then we can watch TV. Those will be your best friend. You can also do if then. If we do this, then we get this. It pairs a demand with the reward. So you let them know that you can have the reward when we get the dinner dishes cleaned up, when you unload the dishwasher. Now, positive reinforcement is key in all of this. I think of things like chore charts and, when I would get my allowance. I didn't get my allowance for free. I was reinforced by cleaning the bathroom, because I definitely felt like I needed to be reinforced for that one. So my parents weren't saying, you need to clean the bathroom or else. They weren't saying, I'll give you $5 to clean the bathroom. It was on me to do the chore, and I was reinforced by gaining my allowance. Rewards are just earned as incentives for a job well done. It's paired with the positive behavior that you've seen. It's a teaching tool, because they're learning, okay, I do this. Oh, I get reinforced. I earn this. And it creates an actual positive change on behavior. Bribes, they tend to just be in response to a challenging behavior, right? So if you stop screaming at me, I'll give you the cookie. It's going to be a quick fix, and it's not going to change the behavior over time. They're then going to learn the opposite. Okay, I screamed, they're going to give me that cookie. Instead, I want to pair it with, if you use a calm voice with me, then we can have the things that we like. And then when I see that positive behavior, I can reinforce that now. Your teachers, they might be asking you to do this at home sometimes, right? Maybe we're having some trouble in classes and you get asked by the teacher, would you mind, doing some kind of positive reinforcement system at home, some kind of home reward system? Just make sure that it is done in a reinforcing way, that it's paired with actual seeing the desired behavior, the things that you want to see, instead of being paired for if you don't get any office referral today, you can have that toy. That's not going to fix it over time. So we want to make sure that it's reinforcing what they're doing right.
All right. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. We hope that you guys gained, and we'll go through and read.
Well, I like that first one.
We'll read some of the chat comments.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let me see if I can.
Can you make it bigger?
The first
Yeah.
one is, oh no, it doesn't go bigger. I can read it. Got good eyesight. What are some strategies to stay calm and not get frustrated when the child is not listening to you?
Great question.
When your buttons are getting pushed, that's right. Yeah. So we get asked every time we come back to school during professional developments, what do you do to stay calm? And I think of things like I might take a walk, or I like to go camping. So those are my big things that I do to make sure I'm staying calm. But my small things are, I practice my own reminders to deep breathe. Sometimes I fidget with my ring, and those are different physical ways to remind me to stay almost grounded.
Some of the things that I do, and when my child is not listening, I do a couple things. I count in my head, silently in my head. I am counting so that it reminds me just to take a moment to myself. And then I also, it's funny you say the ring, I squeeze my hands together. So I squeeze my hands together because it's just a way for me to release some of that tension, but not react.
I like what you said about that wait time, because that's also another way we're not picking up the rope, right? We're offering that wait time to give ourselves time to react, think through what we're going to say. And it also gives our kids time to realize that, oh, they're not going to react to me.
Right.
And they might just calm down a little bit more themselves because you're not picking up the rope.
Yeah.
And so counting in your head, giving yourself that wait time to think through what you're going to say.
Another good thing can be scripting out or just planning ahead of what you are wanting to say. What are you wanting to address? Especially if you know that your kiddo tends to be a little bit adversive or so. You know what? I'm going to already know that beforehand. So I want to look at those targets. What are those buttons that may be pressing with my kiddo? So you know what? I'm going to plan it beforehand. I'm going to plan to how am I going to rationally detach myself? If my kiddo starts yelling and screaming, well, then again, remember, behavior influences behavior. I don't want to be addressing the yelling and screaming. I might interrupt and redirect and say, hey, little one, right now you're yelling at me. I'll tell you what, I need you to go ahead, calm yourself down. We're not crying. We're going to have a conversation. I'm going to be right back. And I may step away for a minute or two. I don't want to feed into that behavior. And then I will come back and check in. So those are different ways. Again, with that being said, there's many different ways. I think you got to take it from the situation, but ultimately, it's making sure that we're not taking it personally. We're rationally detaching from that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The next one is, if we impose consequences for every action, a child might become rebellious, thinking they're going to face too many consequences. However, if we don't give them consequences for everything, then how do we get them to behave the way we want them to behave?
You want me?
My brain immediately thinks to pick your battles.
It could be pick your battles, but I'm also looking at this too. You're correct. If we are to always have consequences and deliver consequences to our kiddos, then we're only focusing on the negative aspects. The other thing, though, is what we do here in school and what we encourage there at home is positive behaviors, positive behavior intervention support. So with that being said, when we were talking about specific, yes, I'm going to be specific in stating to my kiddos, hey, right now, I need you to go ahead and throw out the trash. Or, hey, right now, what I need you to do is to grab the trash can, take it out to the curb, something like that. But I'm also going to be very specific in how I'm going to reinforce them. Hey, thank you so much for taking out the trash. Thank you so much for having a calm body. Hey, I noticed that you helped me clean up the dishes. I want to catch all of the positive things and not just the negative things. So with that being said, yes, when we only focus on the negative, well, then our kiddos will have this negative aspect. I'm only getting called on, or I'm only getting corrected. But if I'm catching those positive things, especially the ones that I want to see or have behaviors displayed that are positive, I'm going to very much hone in on those, and I'm going to try to praise them every time. And that takes it from a different stance on the age level and, of your kiddos. Are they younger? Well, then my praise may be more, high five and excited. But if my kiddo is older and maybe a teenager, you know what? That small praise of, hey, great job. Thank you for doing this. And just showing appreciation to them, being in the positive manner. That's how we're going to be able to change some of those behaviors and not focusing only on the negatives.
What I mean by when I say pick your battles is think about the big part of that behavior. you want to focus, you don't want to pick every piece of the behavior apart. You want to pick the main thing causing it. So if we think of the function behind what they're doing, the why, and then, if we pick the worst part, the highest intensity part, I'm going to focus on consequences for that in order to make sure that I am trying to get to the root of the problem. So too many consequences, you're right, it's going to lead to them feeling like they're not successful. So we pick the big things and we ignore the minor behaviors.
Right.
Yeah.
Great questions and great comments. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, those were great questions. I think, isn't it 10 positive to every 1 negative? Is that the ratio?
4 to 1, 4 to 1.
Oh, 4. Oh, okay. That's better than 10.
I like your 10.
But yeah, you're very positive. We like that.
Yeah.
We try to bring out all the positive we can around here.
Yeah. So if you're going to have to correct your child, you almost want to build up their tolerance for that correction. So if I know if I have to correct someone, I might find something that they're doing good first. It might be they're screaming, maybe they're being very demanding in the restaurant, and I want to correct how demanding they're being in a restaurant. But they were sitting there and they were maybe using their knife and fork. I'm going to find something to praise them for. Hey, thank you for sitting there and using your table manners. I'm so proud of you for that. Would you mind just going ahead and using a quiet voice time? Because remember, we're in a restaurant and we have to make sure that we're being aware of people around us. So I'm putting some praise to it before I even give that correction, which catches them a little off guard.
Right. I love that you guys talked about the strategies to stay calm and just practicing that wait time. I know sometimes I have to step away and I go to my room and I'm like, okay, we're going to reconvene in about 10 minutes.
Yes.
That gives me a chance to calm down. And that gives my child a moment too, to kind of process and realize, okay, I have majorly screwed up here.
Let our kiddos be able to self-reflect.
Right. Sometimes we come back together and I don't need to say anything because they've figured it out on their own, which is what we want. We want our kids, hopefully, and that doesn't always happen. So my kids are not perfect, I promise. But sometimes it does. And it's great. It's very, very helpful. And it's awesome to see their reflection process.
Yeah, there were times when, given time to really think on it, I would punish myself more than my parents were ever going to punish me.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
And then I'd feel guilty and apologize.
Yeah. Well, guys, we really appreciate you and your time this evening. Are there any more questions before we are done with this presentation this evening? Okay. All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you, parents, for joining us. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.